TeeTee Terry, welcome to the Victory Degree Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, TT, I figured we would start with a simple question here. If a stranger were to stop you on the street and ask you, who is TT Terry, and give you 2 minutes to respond, what would your response be?
TeeTee Terry is a professional track and field athlete for Nike that specializes in the short sprints, the women's, the 100 and the 200, two-time gold medalist in the 4x1, USC Prodigy, and competed for Team USA on the youth and the senior level.
What about personality wise?
I would let them know that TeeTee Terry is someone that just enjoy being around others, helping others, without expecting anything in return. Loves to do a lot of DIY projects, love kids, connect with kids immediately in the moment of seeing them. Have 2 degrees from USC, a bachelor's in communications, a minor in forensic criminality, and a master's in entrepreneurship and innovation that was all accomplished within 4 years.
Speaking of DIY projects, I have to ask you: did you finish putting up that mirror? I think it was in one of your rooms. I saw your one of your most recent YouTube videos.
Yes, I did. I did. All the mirrors are put up around here, so yes.
Nice. Where does like that passion come from? The whole DIY side.
I really know. I think it was something that I just always had in me. Like when I was younger, I would always want to just rearrange my room when I get bored,
Mm.
and I'll pick like the weirdest time to rearrange. It'd be like late at night. I'm like, okay, well, I'm tired of looking at it laid out like this. My daddy will come home to my room rearranged a whole different way.
So speaking of your dad, he has played a huge influence in your life. And I was reading up on your journey and then doing research for this podcast. You have kind of earned this reputation on your team as the one who's always saying all the motivational stuff. So you're always trying to help out your teammates by maybe saying some motivational quotes and trying to just like lift everyone's spirits. But for the longest time, that was your dad to you. And
Mhm.
so throughout your track and field journey, he was always the one that was saying, TT, you can do it, keep going. And so I'm curious your relationship with your dad and how that's evolved over the years as you've grown to become, one of the best to do it in the track and field realm.
I mean, our relationship had kind of stayed the same. Like, obviously, it has grown over the years, but we still talk every day. Whether it's for 2 minutes or 10 minutes, we still just make sure to have a conversation with each other. If we don't have a conversation, one of us will call each other the next day, or so, or late at night. Like, what you doing? Like, oh, well, I'm just calling because you didn't call me. I'm just seeing something wrong or something like that. My dad told me he like to use. He like, we beefing or something. What's going on? I'll be like, no, I just got too busy or too carried away doing stuff back to back. Or sometimes we be on different time zones. Or sometimes, especially like when I'm overseas, it may be a whole new day for me, but he may be in the same day. So sometimes we'll talk maybe multiple times in a day for him, but it really just be one day, one time a day for me. So it all just depends. But yeah, our relationship is still strong. We're still there, and like I said, we make sure we talk to each other every day.
And in what ways has he motivated you? What are some of the things that he likes to tell you when maybe you're feeling a little down?
He has motivated me a lot. Like, when I was younger, because I started track when I was 9, and I'm 25 now. So I went through all the different levels: junior Olympics, middle school, high school, college, and now professional. It was at one point when I was doing recreational track, junior Olympics, and I wanted to quit because I forgot what they tried to make me do something long at practice, and I wanted to quit. And they literally called my dad while he was at work. He left work for a few minutes, came out there, see what was wrong with me. I'm like, well, I don't want to run to this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, my legs hurt, so I can't do this. And he's like, well, get on the ground. I'm going to stretch you out. We literally laid in the middle of the field. He was literally stretching me out in the middle of the field. Mind you, he's on the clock at work. And then once he was done, he's like, okay, now get up there and go run. And then I just went out there and ran, and I just kept going back ever since and stuff, and then he just say different stuff, and it all just depends on like what type of meet it is or where I'm at in the season, because at some point, you give grace at the beginning of the season, and it's like, okay, when stuff ain't changing, it's like, okay, now. But yeah, so it all just depends on where I'm at in the season, and he'll just constantly just motivate me, let me know like what I can do and what I've already accomplished, and basically like use what I've already accomplished in ways that you can get through this too, because I've seen you do X, Y, and Z when this was going on or that was going on. So
I mean, do you ever consider like if you didn't have, I mean, I'm sure your mom has also played a huge role in supporting you. Do you ever consider what would happen if they, weren't there to support you, especially through your earlier years as you were coming up?
would probably say that I probably just wouldn't be a track runner
Mm,
today probably, but I'll still be successful in whatever I did choose to do, because aside from track, I was into I went to a law enforcement school because at the time I wanted to like join a federal agency or so I went to a law enforcement school, and then if I didn't have track like set up and stuff, literally outside of school, like as soon as I graduated, I could have went into being a 911 dispatcher. Or I could have went started police academy, stuff like that. So I already kind of had a path set up, because that's one thing my dad did have, like sports aside. He asked me one time, I think in what high school maybe or middle school, I can't remember, but at one point he had asked me, he's like, what do you want to do like later in life? Like you need to figure out what it is you want to do, because now you got to start setting yourself up to be able to be working towards fulfilling that goal. So I was like, at the time I told him I didn't know, and he was like, well, you got by such and such a date to give me an answer on what you want to do. And then he actually forgot when I did report back to him and told him what I want to do by the deadline he gave me. He actually forgot that he gave me a deadline that we spoke about that, but I had let him know like, well, I want to do I want to be a K-9 officer. I want to do SWAT team. So he looked up into like different schools, and in Miami we have a lot of different, I guess they'll call them like trade schools, I guess. So like my magnet school was 3 different strands. It had law, homeland security, forensic science, and law studies. So like each strand you would graduate with some type of certification once you leave high school. And then yeah, so it was a balance of either wanting to be into the law enforcement field or wanted to be a neonatal nurse, but I was more towards the law enforcement side. So yeah, I feel like I would still have been successful in whatever it was that I chose to do, because I actually put myself in track and field. Like my parents didn't put me in track. I just so happened to see a group of kids training while me and my family and some of my friends was walking from school. And I was like, okay, y'all, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna try out one day. We all went out there, we tried, and I made it to the Junior Olympics my first year in 2009 to where we competed in North Carolina and Greensboro, and I was a part of the age group, the Bantam age group that broke the national record in the 4x1, and I just kept going back ever since.
let me ask you this. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I've asked a couple of my guests recently, and I've received pretty interesting answers. So I'm interested to hear what your answer might be. So there's this theory that, people always say follow your passion. That's like the generic advice. It's like your parents always tell you, your teachers always tell your professor, it's like go follow your passion.
Mm-hmm.
There's this other, I guess, side to it where instead of following your passion, follow what you're good at. And then once you become good at something, your passion evolves out of that. And so, for instance, let's say, I were to do track and field, and I can already tell you that would not go well. But let's say I were to do track and field, and I'm making junior Olympics my first year. I'm setting all these world records. People are like, Nick, you're so great at track. Like, you're so good at this. Your passion evolves out of that. It evolves out of gaining the recognition that you're good at something. And so I'm curious, I mean, for you, you mentioned starting track, and right away you made Junior Olympics, and right away people probably saw, wow, TeeTee is really talented at this. So how do you kind of view those two sides of the argument? Do you think that we intrinsically have passions that we're drawn to, or do passions evolve from us being good at certain things?
I think it can be 50-50. I think it can go both ways, depending on the person, because some people, they'll have a passion for something, then when they have to do certain things to fulfill what it is to like achieve that passion on a different level, sometimes they may grow out of it, or they realize that it wasn't something that they really liked all along. You know how you have some people that they develop a passion for something and they pursue it, but then they like grow bored of it, grow tired of it, and they try to go into something else. And then you have other people where they start something and their passion grow from that. Like they want to continue to learn, continue to excel, and figure out how to continue to get better at it is that they're doing. So I think it can kind of go 50-50 depending on a person and maybe how they're viewing that quote unquote passion at the time. Like if it's something that they want to achieve like lifelong goals with, or if it's something that just for the moment, just to get them by with something. So it all just depends.
What you mentioned, there was a time when you wanted to quit track. Was there ever any other time? I mean, I'm curious how your passion for track has evolved throughout the years.
No, I don't think there was another time that I actually wanted to quit. I mean, every day athletes will say we want to quit when it's like a hard workout or something like that, but we don't really want to quit. But when I was younger and I said I wanted to be done, I really did want to be done. Like I was crying to go back with my mom and everything, but I don't think there was another moment where I literally said I want to quit and like actually meant that I wanted to quit. It more so was one of the moments of like oh my gosh, why we gotta do this type of workout today, or this workout gonna be hard, so I don't feel like doing this. I wish I was doing something else, just something like that. But I feel like my passion just grew with track, because at first it was just something that I was just enjoying because I was young. It wasn't serious, and I just loved being able to travel with my friends and be able to go out and have fun and go from place to place. You know, travel with you. I had the privilege of being able to have coaches that was able to support the athletes for us to travel to different meets and travel every weekend, going here and going there to compete. So I think that was something that I love and that drew me to the sport. And I feel like my first few friends I made were through track and field. Being on that team, competing at the time for Metro Day or Miami Day. It went by both names. So yeah, so I feel like my passion just grew as I went through each level. I knew it was starting to get serious. And like in middle school, I was winning state titles, the middle school state titles, and then high school came, and I was doing what I needed to do in high school. And then I learned that you can actually go to college free and of your choice out of high school. So, you know, that's when it started getting more serious. And then my sophomore year was when I won my first individual state title in 100. And then I went and won in the 200. And I don't think I was really expected to win my sophomore year. Like, yeah, I was fast and I was running with some of the top girls. But I know my freshman year I had got third that year. And then my sophomore year, I think one of the girls ended up coming back that same year that was one of the favorites that won the previous year. So, you know, it kind of took some people by surprise, and it kind of didn't take others by surprise. And I think my passion just continued to grow. And then once I got to USC, before I even stepped on the track at USC, I was already writing down what records I wanted to accomplish, what it is I wanted to do at USC while I was there within my 4 years, what I can accomplish in 3 years, because I want to graduate in 3 years to go pro. So my passion just kind of kept growing as I went through each level of the sport.
You talk about a lot of the hardships and those days when you might have a 5 a.m. workout and your alarm goes off at like 4:50 in the morning, and you're like, the last thing I want to do right now is get out of bed and go work out. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, and a lot of people struggle with getting their mind right and having that mindset of, you know what, even though I don't want to do this, I'm going to go do it. And that's where a lot of people kind of stop.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would your advice be, or at least what do you tell yourself in those moments when the last thing you want to do is a workout, but you still go and do it? Like, what's kind of the self
Um,
talk that you give yourself?
The self talk for me, kind of like, especially like right now, like for instance, you know, it's days you don't want to get up and stuff like that. So for me right now, is me telling myself I want to win a medal in Paris individually. So, you know, only top three can get a medal at the Olympics, and you compete with some. I will be competing with some of the best women in the world. So I know they're not just going to give it to me or just allow me to be able to win a medal. So when I get up and I know I don't want it, I'm like, okay, you won a medal in Paris, so it's time to get up, or you got to do this, you got to do that, or sometimes I just tell myself that there's another person out there training harder than me and that wants the same thing that I want. But if I'm taking shortcuts or I'm not doing what I need to do or giving my all, then I'm already putting myself at a deficit, because I know the next person's out there training and doing whatever it is that they can to achieve the goal that they have set in mind.
We had, speaking of the Olympics, I had another question, but I'll get back to that later. We had Sylvia Hoffman on the show, who is an Olympic bobsledder. And one of the things that she told me, which was really surprising, I did not realize this, was that most of the Olympians are not paid. Unless you have a sponsorship or unless you're generating income through other means. Sylvia was saying how pretty much you have to cover the costs for mostly everything. And that really shocked me. And especially it shocked me because she was talking about equipment and having to cover most of those costs. And then when she's not training for the Olympics, she's working 2 to 3 jobs just to, support her lifestyle, the basic day-to-day needs, but then also support this whole, Olympian, I want to go and compete and represent my country. From, I guess, your experience, I know you're going to your first Olympics now, but is there anything like that most people don't realize about the Olympics, or some of the, the background and how it all comes together?
Yeah, I would definitely say that is the truth for a lot of athletes, especially if you're not sponsored. I'm not too sure how the winter sports and stuff work, but I know like for track and field, we have some athletes that aren't sponsored or maybe on like bonus contracts or just gear contracts and things of that sort. So some athletes do be having to work multiple jobs or other jobs just to fulfill their dream of becoming a professional or trying to get signed by a shoe company and stuff. But I'm not in a position where I have to work another job. I'm actually sponsored by Nike, And a lot of athletes there, like the top athletes in track and field, are sponsored by a shoe company, and then they also have other sponsors outside of their shoe company. Whether that's different, maybe a sports drink like Gatorade, or maybe if it's a watch company like Omega or Richard Mille. So it all just depends, and I also think it also depends on what country you compete for, because countries like treat their athletes very differently. Like me and some of my teammates will always say how, and if we was competing for like Italy or competing for Doha or Qatar or something like that, that we'll be like a king or a queen in our area. Like we'll have so much stuff paid for, like housing and this and that paid for. So it all just depends on what country you also compete for. Because I feel like some countries do a great job at taking care of their athletes, and especially Olympians. I don't think people understand that being an Olympian is like a once in a lifetime moment. For a lot of athletes, like you never know how many Olympics you may go to, but just to make it to one Olympics is like a great achievement. I don't think a lot of people understand and realize how much athletes put their body through to achieve that moment. And even like for track, how we just go out there and run for a couple seconds, and we train a whole we start in like November season, will probably start in March for outdoor season, February or January for some people that's doing indoor, and train all the way to September to hit the goals that we want to. And it's a lot that a lot of athletes do put their body through, and having to make a lot of sacrifices. Like you said, some of them have to go from training to work or work to training. It takes a toll on you, and I feel like it takes a different type of athlete to be able to go after their goal, knowing the sacrifice that they have to make and how much harder that they have to work compared to someone that may not have to be going out there and getting the extra job because they have a stable income coming in.
You talk about competing for a couple seconds, and that's the part that's always so fascinating to me. In the 100-meter sprint, you're out there for 10 and a half seconds. I mean, a really good time, right? And it's interesting because when I look at other sports like basketball, football, I mean, name any other, big sport, you have a whole game and there's ebbs and flows within the game. And so a lot of times we'll see athletes start off really slow and then pick it up throughout the game, or maybe vice versa. But for you, it's like you got 10 seconds or 11 seconds. And if you're not good from the start, that's it. Like you're going to get a bad time. So here's the difficulty of competing in something like that where it's so short, and to your point, you've put in so much work and so much time into competing for this, training for this 10-second sprint. The difficulty of competing in something like that compared to, let's say a NBA game or an NFL game or a hockey game.
I just feel like the margin for error is very small for us, because like you said, you have an NBA game where you have quarters, so you can make a mistake in the first quarter, the first half, and be able to bring your team back and take the win. Whereas in track, you only have a small margin of error, like, because if you competing with some of the top women or top men in your sport, they're going to bring their A game, and you have to bring your A game. There's only so many mistakes that you can make if you want to beat them or be up there with them to run certain times. And I feel like, but also with track, we also have other opportunities to be able to redeem ourselves with meets later in the season, or could be as well as the next week we have another meet. But it's just a matter of, it's a split second in the split moment for you to be able to do what it is that you need to do and to lock in. And track is individualized till it's not, but it's very individualized. But you also have, like, of course, your teammates and so that can train with you to help you bring out the best in you. But once you step on the line, you're running just for yourself. Whereas in NBA or football, you on a line with all the other dudes that can block for you, or they can cover for you, or they can catch, or they can do this, they can do that. And track is not like that unless you're running maybe a relay. But even like in the 4x1, there's still a split second for margin of error, because if y'all messing up on y'all baton pass, someone else is smoother, they could zoom straight by y'all and this and that. So it all just depends on what else you're doing. But I just say track, we just don't have as much time to make those mistakes or try to rely on somebody else to bring us back in the race. Once we start on that line, we just for ourselves. You just pray that everything that you've been doing and working for comes together, and you're able to go out there and run what you expect to run.
I'm curious, because there's so much riding on one race and heading into the Olympics now in Paris, there's going to be a lot of pressure. You've mentioned you want to win an individual award, you want a medal at the Olympics. because there's so much pressure and because it's such a short amount of time that you're actually competing, I'm curious what like your pre-run routine is, or maybe like even the day of or the night of, because I'm sure it has to be very specific to get your body right for, again, that 10 or 11 seconds.
So the day before competition, we have something we call pre-meet, where you just get your body ready to compete the next day. We'll just do a couple block stars and maybe like a 60 or something like that. Nothing too crazy, and that's just about it. That's all. That's all we'll do, because it's like if you don't got it, then it's not gonna really happen overnight. So we just do the pre-meet, and we after pre-meet we'll get treatment, whatever necessary treatment you need. If you need to take an ice bath, if you need deep tissue or flush or anything, you kind of just fill out your own body and figure out what it is that you need, and you just go from there. The coach do what he need to do with pre-meet. He look at the different reps and tell you what you need to fix or what you need to try to do, and what to take with you going into the meet the next day. And then for me personally, I like to lay out my uniform the night before. So that way when I do get ready the next day, I just have all my pieces laid out. I don't have to be searching for anything. And that way, if I want to end up taking a nap after I wake up right before I have to leave or something, I have the freedom to do that, because I don't have to worry about getting up and rushing and trying to find everything and figure out what is said and what that is.
I want to take you back to your time at USC. And the reason I want to do that is because we had Josh Dobbs on the podcast. And if you're familiar with Josh Dobbs, obviously quarterback in the NFL, started for the Vikings last year, but he was also an aerospace engineering major in college. So he was doing aerospace engineering, playing football full time, starting quarterback for Tennessee. And I asked him what a day in the life of Josh Dobbs looked like at Tennessee, and it was like the craziest schedule I think I've like ever heard in my life. Basically, from like 5 o'clock in the morning till midnight. He's either studying or he's working out with the team. You went to USC like you mentioned, and you got your degree in 3 years. But you also set an NCAA record your freshman year, I think, with a time of 10:86 in the 100-meter sprint. So what was a day in the life of TeeTee Terry at USC?
Um, well, I set the school record with 1086. I'm like, not the NCAA record, the
Yeah.
school record. But then like for me was my, let me see, what year was that? Was it my sophomore year going into my junior year? I think my sophomore year, it was one day, like, so Wednesdays in the fall we have hills, and hills are at 5 a.m., but you got to be on campus at 5 a.m. to leave in the bus at 5 a.m. So you have to get up at like 4 maybe, because you got to eat breakfast, you got to do this, you got to do that, get ready. So my Wednesday would literally go from like 4 a.m. till about 9:45, 10 o'clock at night, because I had a class that was over at like 9:30. It was like 6:30 to 9 or 6:30 to like 9:20 or something like that. And I had to take that class on Wednesdays because that was the only day it was allowed, because it was a once a week class, so that's why it was so long as well. And I needed that class to fulfill the credit I need, and I couldn't do it in the spring. I couldn't take 20 units in the fall. I mean in the spring, because that's when we travel and stuff like that. So it was better off taking 20 units in the fall. And I would not recommend 20 units to nobody. Even like regular kids that weren't in sports and stuff was looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, why are you taking 20 units? Like, the most they probably take is like 12 or 16. I think the most that they let athletes take like 16. Like, you had to actually get it written off for you to take 20 units. So I had to like actually go to the higher ups and allow them to sign off for me to be able to take 20 units. But I was able to achieve it. I looked at what it was I want to come. And I'm like, I want to graduate in 3 years. I can only take this class on Wednesdays. I know I'll be able to do it. But then I knew Thursdays we had classes off. We had practice off. And I kind of set up my schedule to where I was done in the week by Thursday. So I had my whole Friday full, because I just had, open, because I just had practice on Fridays. But I didn't have to worry about any classes on Fridays. I think it even got to a point where I didn't even have to worry about classes on Thursday. So my week was really done on a Wednesday, kind of. So I knew the way I loaded my schedule and what I was getting myself into. And I was able to handle, like, that was probably like my lowest semester at USC, but it still was like a 3.3 or like a 3.2. But I'm more of a like 3.8, 3.9 GPA type person. So, that was one of my, like, I wouldn't say it was really stressful, because I knew how to manage it. Like, I had really good time management, so that played a huge role of like getting assignments done weeks in advance, or studying for certain stuff weeks in advance, so that way when the time come, I didn't have to cram everything, or writing out, okay, I got a paper due for this class, I got a paper due for this class, but let me do this one, start this one in this week, start this one next week. And, you know, it just kind of just overlapped with each other. And I made sure to get as much of my stuff done during the week so I didn't have to wait till the weekend to get things done.
Where do you think this discipline comes from? I mean, just hearing you talk about the stuff that you were doing, you sound like a very disciplined individual. Where does that skill come from?
I would say discipline started early. Like with my dad, like he used to do that where when we was in school, he'd be like, do all your homework on Friday or throughout the week so that way the weekend you don't have to worry about doing your homework and you're not gonna wait till Sunday to do your homework for the Monday and all that coming in. But you know, in high school I was taking honor classes and stuff like that. So it was some days where I had to like take my homework and stuff through the weekend because I couldn't cram all that into one day or stuff like that. And even like with studying dispatch, in our dispatch class was 12 modules, and you know how I talked about graduating with being able to become a dispatcher, you had to take a test, 100-question test based off of 12 modules. So you don't know what it is that they can ask you within them 12 modules when it came to that test. So, you know, that was something I used to have to break down and always study different chapters and different modules. And then our teacher used to always hit us with pop quizzes randomly. He'd just throw out, he'd be like, okay, cold quiz or this type of quiz. And it's like, dang. So you always I had to always be on my A game when studying and stuff like that. And it even came down to when I did have to take my dispatch test, I studied so much and to the point that I remembered everything that I took 100-question test in 10 minutes and I passed with a 98. And like literally when I went to like submit my test, the lady was like, are you sure you're done? Like, you don't want to go back? I'm like, ma'am, I'm sure, I'm positive I'm done. Like, I'm good. Like, you could tell me my, because it was one of the moments where once you finish, they tell you your score like immediately, basically. I was like, you can just let me know. I know I did good. And I had wrote my teacher before I went in because he wasn't at the site with us. And I wrote him before I went in. And when I came out, I wrote him, he was like, you're done already? Like, you sure you're done? I was like, yes, like, I got a 98 or 96. Like, I completed I was done in 10 minutes. They were so shocked and so surprised.
What would your advice be to someone looking to become more disciplined?
I would say write down everything it is that you need to accomplish for that week so you can look at what it is all you have to accomplish and rank them in order of priority and be able to like set them throughout the week of what you need to get done. Like, okay, by Tuesday I want to have this completed, this done. Wednesday I want this done. Thursday I want to have all this done, and just keep going like that and give yourself room to be able to break things up as opposed to trying to cram everything into one day or trying to do everything within a couple hours, because you're going to get drained. You're going to wear yourself out. And I kind of like to do stuff and I'll set like a certain time frame for it. And then once I feel myself getting tired, sometimes I want to push through, but then it gets to some point where it's like, no, you need to take a break. You need to stop. You need to go to sleep. So I would definitely say to write down and write out what it is all that you need to accomplish, rank them in order, and set deadlines, like actual deadlines. Don't just say, okay, I want to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this. Set a deadline. Monday, I need to be completed with this, or Monday by 6 o'clock, I want this done. Friday, I want to make sure I have X, Y, Z done. And that way you can just make it become a habit. And that way it starts to becoming natural to you. You just get to the point where you may not even have to write it down anymore unless you want to just check off what it is that you're doing. But yeah, other than that, it starts to become a natural routine and it just be something that just flow over time.
So speaking of priorities, I'm curious if you were to create, and I'm sure you have for the weeks, leading up to the Olympics, including this week, if you're to rank your current priorities, what would they be?
My current priorities would be sleep, recovery. Sleep and recovery kind of can go in and in, but when I say recovery, I mean like getting deep tissue massage, taking ice baths, doing whatever else necessary, acupuncture, whatever else that I need to do. So I definitely say sleep, recovery, and nutrition. The way that I'm eating, the way I'm feeling my body, whether I'm hydrating throughout the day, the type, am I taking enough, am I getting enough electrolytes, am I taking my vitamins, am I doing this, am I doing that, and then practice, going to practice with my A game. The moment I walk in, making sure I'm doing everything with intention from the warm up all the way to the workout.
When you say doing things with intention, what does that look like?
So like for me, a lot of I wouldn't really say call them issues, but a lot of things that I could fix would be with my technique. So I would look at it as when I'm starting strides, okay, work on your push out, work on using your arms, or work on lifting your knees and stuff, and doing that in the warm up. So that way it would translate over to when the workout come, as opposed to doing a warm up lazy And me doing the warm up lazy is becoming muscle memory without me knowing. That way, when I go into the workout, now I'm running lazy in the workout because I was running lazy in the warm up and I was already training my body to run lazy like that. So that's what I mean by intention. Like telling myself, okay, push out, okay, scratch the ground like this, move your arms like this, and doing drills the same way. Put a little more emphasis in your drills, or a little more, just something else into that will help you achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve.
I'm going to say a name, and you tell me what comes to mind. George Mumford.
Oh, what? I don't even know one word that would even like. I would just say a man full of wisdom. That's what I would say. A man full of wisdom is what he gives me. Like, he gives like that uncle that could just sit and just tell you different stories that would, but not like just stories just to ramble on, but stories that would actually make you look at things differently, think differently, and just be like, oh, like it's just that simple, or oh, that's a good perspective or a different perspective. So yeah.
So let's dive a little bit deeper. I'm curious because I'm sure you know, but we had George on the podcast, and
Hmm.
um, that was my takeaway from my. I think that podcast was maybe about an hour long. That was my takeaway, and I'm working through his other book, The Mindful Athlete. I
Oh, I got
read.
that book right here too.
Yeah, there you go. Let's see it. Yeah, look, George Mumford. If you're watching this, we're big fans. I read his most recent book, which is the title is escaping me right now. I can't believe I forgot about
Is
this.
it unlocked?
Unlocked, yes, correct.
Yeah, I
Yep,
have that one sitting
Unlocked.
over there.
Yeah, that was a great book as well. And so I want to ask what George has been able to teach you, and kind of what help he's been able to give you.
George has been able to teach me a lot and allow me to like look at things differently and actually take a moment to like think and evaluate things differently. Like how we have those moments where something may happen in the day and we try to throw the whole day away, as opposed to just looking at it as like that was just one bad moment of that day. You don't have to throw the whole day away. You can reset and keep going on about your day. And another thing that he told me was like that you're responsible like for your own happiness. Like you can't let other people dictate how you feel or how you respond to things. And I really take that and run with, like, I tell myself like I'm responsible for my happiness. Like, in the way I think and the way I pour into myself is what's gonna manifest. So speaking more positively to myself, or doing different meditation or mindfulness exercise, or thinking differently when it comes to certain things. And even like for this whole season, like he actually helped me through this season of just looking at it race by race. Don't take the past until the next race and the next race and next race, because that was something that I struggled with last year. Like, I was doing bad in the race, and then I'll take that over to the next race, not realizing I was carrying it throughout the whole season as a burden. And then just so happened when I actually found out about George, I ended up talking to him or something, and when I went in PR, well, ran close to my PR literally the next day. My PR was 10:82. I ran 10:83, and the whole season I was running 11 seconds. I couldn't even crack 11. But he had said something to me like, you need to figure, because that year, that's when I didn't make the World Championship team individually, but I made the World Championship team individually the year prior. So I was like, going to tell you, I had already put pressure on myself to make the team. And then when things didn't work out, I felt like I just didn't do what it was that I needed to do. And I carried that throughout the rest of the season, as opposed to just leaving that where it was at and just focusing on the rest of the season. And once he told me that, like, I need to forgive myself for not making the team, I was like, okay, I never thought about it like that. Like, I didn't realize that I was still carrying it, but the way I was responding to certain things he was asking or that we were talking about, he can tell that I was still carrying that. So when he made that statement, I was like, okay, forgive myself for not making the team. And then that's when I was able to go out there and run the PR. And I was like, oh, okay, I just had to approach it differently. And then we have a saying of like, just go out there and just be me, just have fun, just let things flow. Because when I have fun, that's when things tend to work out. When I put too much stress on myself, then things don't work out the way that I intend for them. And then he has this saying of outcome expectation. Like, expect that things are going to go good. Expect that you're going to do X, Y, and Z, that you're going to fulfill whatever it is that you want, and this and that. So you have to look at things way differently than thinking negative what ifs. And then he also say like, when you think those negative what ifs, you're really manifesting those what ifs because your body don't know that you're saying like what if. It just manifests that, okay, well, yesterday I did this and that, so today I'm trying not to do that, but this your body's not listening to, your brain is not listening to the not part. It's just listening to the complaining and what it is that you trying to avoid, but you're really manifesting for you to do the wrong things that you're trying not to do. So I've just been looking at things differently and responding to things differently and saying things differently.
I have a story, and then I have one of your own quotes, and then I have a question. So, story, it reminds me, as we're talking about George Mumford, I recently came across this quote. I think it was from The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary. And they were interviewing Phil Jackson, and they asked Phil, what was like the most like amazing thing about Michael? And, most people expect to, Phil to say, well, it was his shot making ability, or it was his, determination, or he was always so clutch, all the things that when we think of Michael Jordan, we kind of attribute to him. But Phil Jackson said the number one thing, the most impressive thing about Michael was his ability to stay in the moment and to stay focused. And when he was, he'd be walking by media after a game, and he would just look down, block out all the noise, and stay in the present moment. And he mentioned the same thing during a game. And, obviously in reading George's books and talking to George, he said, I think somebody asked him, who were like your best students, when George was teaching, and he said Kobe and MJ. Like they were, far and away his best students. And so it always brings me back to A, the importance of staying in the present moment. And then B, when I look at some of the greats like MJ and Kobe, they had this willingness to learn all the time, and to like go back to, I think there's a fancier term for this, but it's almost like going back to being dumb about something. It's like when you're first learning about something, you know nothing about it, but it takes putting aside your ego to go back to, step one, where you don't know anything about a subject and trying to learn it from scratch. And that's what MJ and Kobe were able to do. I now bring us to this quote that you had about track. You said track is mostly mental. Your physicality is only a small percentage of what you're able to do because you can train and have the best workouts and practice every day. And once you get to the meet, if you don't have your mental right or anything, you're already defeated before you step on a track. That story and that quote brings me to my question of, as you're getting ready to start the race, and even as you're, in the actual race, is there anything that you're telling yourself? Is your mind just off and free? Like what's the state of your mentality?
I really just take moments to breathe when I feel like negative thoughts or I'm not thinking the way I want to be thinking. I'll just take a moment and just breathe. If I'm not doing that, then I'll just repeat different affirmations to myself. Like I'll tell myself, you a great starter. You have excellent top end speed. You belong. And I'll just keep reciting different affirmations to myself. And the people that I rely on in my support group, I may have conversation with them, and I'll take something that sticks out to me from our conversation, and I'll continue to recite that to myself as well. And then going into the race, I still recite those affirmations. Then when I'm on the line, I'll take a deep breath, and then I'm usually just telling myself, patience and push, patience and push, patience and push, because I know if I get a good push out, I can set myself up to be in the race in the beginning, and I can set up the end of my race. Whereas if I don't get a good push out, then now I'm worrying, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that, now I'm just flowing through. I'm not really running through, I'm just going through the motions. And something else that I've actually been working on is trying to think differently when I am competing instead of just letting my mind be blank. Because we realize, like, when my mind is blank or if I'm thinking too much, then I don't do what it is I need to do. So we're trying to find a balance that can help me do what it is I need to do while still thinking the way I need to think properly. So I'm still learning my body and still learning how to compete smarter, be a better athlete. So yeah. But my mental has definitely increased this year. It got way stronger than last year.
So you've won 2 world championships. You're off to your first Olympics. In winning the 2 world championships that you have as part of the relay team, is winning as sweet as you thought it would be?
Yeah, it is, because definitely, like, in 2022, I had a big job to fulfill running last leg up against Jamaica team at the time when they had the top three women in the women's 100 at the time. And you know, on paper it looked like they was determined to win. They was gonna go out there and they was gonna win gold, no questions asked. And being a part of such a young team, myself, Melissa, and Abby being rookies, and then Jenna being a vet, you know, it was like we were the underdogs in that race, and it wasn't really expected for us to win that race. But I knew going into that race and being last leg, I told my teammates, if y'all do what y'all need to do, I'm not getting ran down, or if I do get caught, I'm not just gonna give it up easily. She's gonna have to work for it, and that's exactly what I did. And then just realizing that I was able to hold her off, and like when we crossed the line, I knew that I didn't get caught. I knew I won, but also just sitting on the scoreboard just made it so much more official. And honestly, that's the loudest I ever heard Hayward Field's crowd get, and like they were loud, and a lot of people like that's the loudest we heard them cheer for someone like in that stadium. You know, so that even just made it the moment so much more enjoyable. And then in 2022, being able to run second leg, because I didn't run second leg like before that moment. I haven't run second leg since high school. That was my last time running second leg, because once I got to college, I was just last leg. I was never able to run any other leg. So I was just so happy to be able to run second leg again and do what it is that I did on second leg. You know, even though we had some mishap with the baton exchange and stuff, but just seeing that we was able to run a championship record and do what it was that we had in mind to go out there and win again. You know, even with the 2023, you know, being on the team with my teammate Shakari, you know, and us realizing that we did what it is that we need to do. And I'm sure if you watch the video and then you see that moment where we just celebrate and embrace each other because we realized we did it. Like, and I even in the video I said like we did it. Like, and that was just like such a surreal moment, and just being able to see it come true, and then just knowing that we ran so fast with the mishaps that we had. So just knowing that if our exchanges were cleaner, that we would have ran way faster, probably could have gotten close to the world record, if not the world record at that time, you know. So it made the moments definitely much more sweeter and enjoyable. And then it's just like a shock in that moment, because you know we have moments where we be like, okay, well if I do this, do that, I know how I'm gonna react. But in one of those moments, is like you know you have the confidence, you go in, you know you can win, you make it, but then just seeing it on the board just make it so much more efficient. Than the reactions just happen.
How do you feel after winning? Because there's some people after they win, they might feel less motivated for some period of time. Some people it motivates them even more. So I'm curious, in those moments of joy, how did you feel immediately afterwards? Were you more motivated, or were you like, okay, maybe let's rest for a little bit?
I was still more motivated because I still had meets after that. So like in 2022, I made the team individually, but I didn't make it to the final individually. But I did what I needed to do in the 4x1. But I'm like, okay, I didn't do what I needed to do in the 100. So going into the next meets, I know there's still more that I can do. I know there's more I can showcase. And literally a week after the 2022 World Championships, I went and ran my PR the following week. I PR'd in the race. I went 10:82. And it's like I knew I had it in me. I just didn't do it when I needed to, which is at the World Championships. And then 2023, that season was kind of rough. Whatever, I kind of was just whatever with that season because of the way that it was going, even after World Championships. Because even while I was at World Championships 2023, I just kept telling myself, like, I'm here just for a relay. Like, I'm only here for a relay. Like, I didn't even, like, I'm just here. I was a discretionary pick. I'm just here. I'm going to get the job done, but I'm only here for a relay. So it's like, George had told me one time, he was like, you diminishing your confidence by saying, like, you just here for a relay. This and then I'm like, okay, like, I didn't look at it like that, but looking back at it and realizing what he said, I really was diminishing my confidence, because it's like I was just telling myself like I'm not good enough, or as if I didn't deserve the opportunity of being there, which I did. I did what I needed to do to be able to showcase that I can compete on a relay, you know. So then even after that season, I still just like whatever moment, because the 100 still wasn't going good for me, but the 200 was going great. So it's kind of like I was up and down. Like when it came to 200, I was all in. I was like, okay, I'm ready to run 200. But when it came to the 100, like, ugh, the 100, like again, like, or like, wow, I didn't break 11 again. Like I'm still running slow. I'm still doing this and that. So eventually, once it got toward the end of the season, and then there was that last meet when I had my conversation with George, then I just ran out there like whatever, and then it was like, okay, I did it, but it's like, dang, you did it at the last meet of the season. Like when you obviously it shows that you've been had it in you. Your mental just wasn't there, because how can you just come to the last meet of the season, which is the meet that normally a lot of people are tired, a lot of people aren't going to run as fast as they did throughout the year, but you come out here and run the fastest you have all season. And that showed that it was a mental thing when it came to the 100 as opposed to a physical thing, because If I can go out there and do the 200 and I'm PRing every round, every time I step on the track, I stepped on the track 6 times in 200 and PR'd at least 4 out of the 6 times. And if I didn't PR, I was close to my PR. So it's like I knew the physical was there because if I could run 200, I knew I could run 100. It's just that my mental approach to both was different.
I want to bring us to a different topic. And I was reminded of this topic because I was going through some of your old tweets, and you had tweeted this quote out by Nipsey. And the quote reads, "You will never be criticized by someone who is doing more than you. You will only be criticized by someone who is doing less than you. Remember that." Hearing that quote, just kind of first thoughts, and then just, on a whole, how do you deal with criticism?
I mean, hearing that quote is true. For the most part, I feel like if you do get criticized by somebody that's doing more than you, it's more so of good criticism usually, or criticism from the lens of experience of they know what it takes to do what it is that they did that you're maybe trying to do or get to that point. And then, and just with sports in general, not even just with track, you're gonna have those fans that's overzealous, and stuff like that. So you're gonna have fans that are going to be nitpicking every single thing you do or every little thing you do, or feel like they know what's best for you and this and that. And for me, I just block out the media going into competition. Like it would be times where I literally would just avoid social media before competition, and I won't get on until I'm done competing. Like literally going into trials this year, I was not on social media for I think at least 2 weeks leading up to trials. I literally didn't get back on social media too after the 100 because I did what I needed to do. I fulfilled what I needed to fulfill, and I kind of was still off of because I know I still had the 200. But being realistic, we knew how the 200 was gonna go for me since I had the injuries and stuff that I had this year, but we still had optimism and faith of obviously. So like, if you get a lane for the final, then we gonna do what we need to do. But if not, we already accomplished our job. And yeah, so I avoided social media. I didn't see the stuff that was said about me, and obviously when I did get back on Twitter, I did see some of it, but it was just because other people was like proving them wrong, basically saying like, "Oh, you doubted her, but look, she not made the team now," and it was just kind of just popping up. But other than that, whatever I missed, I just missed. I didn't try to go back and search for it to try to prove nobody wrong. I just let people say whatever it was that they said. I was okay with not seeing whatever it was in this and that. So I think I did a good job with just avoiding social media as a whole, so that way I don't have to worry about trying to not see this tweet or seeing this tweet or this post by accident when I could just completely just get off of it. And I literally was only on TikTok because my TikTok isn't track related or mainly track related. It's more of a whole bunch of mixture of other stuff. So I was able to actually enjoy it and not have to worry about seeing track this or track that. But whereas Twitter, no, I just would completely avoid Twitter. Instagram be okay, but I'll avoid Instagram too, and then I'll just come back when I'm ready to come back.
In thinking about criticism, I'm curious if you, well, first of all, if you have any role models that you look up to, and then if you've been able to take away anything from them in either dealing with criticism or just anything that you're able to learn from some of the role models that you admire.
Um, I mean, I had different athletes that I looked up to in the sport and track and field, like Carmelita Jeter. I used to watch Shelly and Fraser Price growing up, Alison Felix, Sonya Richard Ross, all of them. But as far as like when it comes to criticism and stuff like that, I just avoid it. Just don't worry about social media. Or I've learned like from my college coach and from my coaches, like, and even from some of my teammates, if it's not your support network or the any people that actually know what's going on with you, you can care less what other people say. 'Cause even like for this year, going into Olympic trials, I was hurt. People didn't know I was hurt until it was mentioned at Olympic trials in the final, I believe, once I had placed third on the podium or whenever they mentioned it. I never said anything to the people, so I don't know how they found out, but I never mentioned it because I know at the end of the day, I know what I'm going through. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what position I'm in to be able to do what it is that I want to do, not what y'all expect for me to do based off of past experience. Like, yes, I appreciate all my supporters, I appreciate all my fans, but if you just want to sit and down talk without knowing the full story, then that's on you. I'm not gonna try to sit and go after every single person that says something about me because I'm gonna be losing my mind. I'm gonna be running crazy trying to go after every single person. And I just learned like early, like in college, like long as I know what I got going on, my coach is good, and the people that's within my support network know I'm okay, and I'm just doing things like this and that because of X, Y, and Z to get the better out of it. I'm okay because even in college, it was like an incident where I never ran indoor season before, so I was new to indoor coming into college, and it was a meet that we ran at the beginning of the season where if you never really ran indoor, you have to run 3 rounds as opposed to the other people that already have time. They only run 2 rounds. So I ran the first qualifying round because I never had an indoor time for the 60. And then I ran the second round because I made it to the second round. And then from the second round, I made it to the third round, but I didn't run the final. And I pulled out of the final, and people was wondering, like, why did she not run the final or this, and that? And I actually, I think I actually posted her, took time to, explain to people. And then my coach, Coach Carroll, was like, you don't owe them no explanation. Like, it's not their business on what it is that you got going on. As long as your daddy know and I'm good and we all, the people, the inner people is good and know what's going on, you okay. And then from that day forward, I just learned that I don't have to explain things to anyone else because at the end of the day, people still gonna have their own opinion. People still think, and people still gonna coach from the couch and feel like they know what's best without seeing everything else that's going on behind the scenes. They only see what they see for like a split few seconds. Y'all don't know what a person could be going through at home or what they could be going through at practice or whatever else that could be affecting their everyday life.
TeeTee, as we wrap up this conversation, a couple more questions to round us out. I have to ask, obviously, with the Paris Olympics coming up, what are you most looking forward to?
Competing. Definitely competing. I went to Paris earlier this year, but I didn't really sightsee or do anything that much. I know my teammate had made a statement about she wants to earn being in Paris, so we'll be back later. And I kind of heard her, so I'm like, okay, that's a good look on it, because we know we gonna be back. We're gonna make this team, and we're coming back to Paris. So I would definitely look forward to definitely competing, doing what it is I need to do, going into Paris, being a more smarter athlete than I was at Olympic trials, being a better athlete than I was at Olympic trials with the little time that we did have to practice and the little stuff I have been able to tweak and get out, squeeze out. And then doing a little sightseeing here and there, I've seen the Eiffel Tower from I wouldn't say a distance because I was able to pose and take a whole picture with it because it was next to a track that we trained with, but probably just being able to actually go up the Eiffel Tower this time and just in other little monuments around Paris and whatever else comes with it.
Is there anything that you're not looking forward to?
No, not really. Not that I can actually think of or pinpoint.
Yeah. I'm curious as we, look at larger picture. I read somewhere that you have aspirations to potentially go into broadcasting one day. And so at USC, you got your Bachelor of Arts in Communication and then a master's in entrepreneurship. Were those degrees at all related to your desire to maybe step into the booth one day?
The communication was, the communication was, like I said, I was into criminal justice stuff, but you don't need a criminal justice degree to become a police officer. So I was like, no point of me limiting myself to just criminal justice with a degree when I don't mainly need that to fulfill the dream of becoming a police officer if I wanted to go back into that field. And then my master's in entrepreneurship and innovation just came because I know eventually I'm going to want to branch off and do my own things. And right now I want to open up my own daycare. Or whatever. So I know that would come in handy with learning the ropes of the entrepreneurship and things of that sort.
You mentioned earlier in the interview enjoying working with kids. You just mentioned opening up a daycare. What's the advice that you give kids who either maybe want to be in track or just general life advice?
Just in general, I always tell them just have fun with whatever you do and give your all and definitely have fun because the moment you stop having fun with it, you just gotta put it to the side and try to pivot and find something else that you enjoy, something else you do. Because if you're no longer enjoying it, it's going to be very hard to give your all to it. I would say, and I would just definitely say, just when speaking of giving your all, give your all in whatever you do. Whatever you put your mind to, make sure you always giving 110%.
And stay in the present moment. Shout out to George Mumford.
Yes.
TeeTee, one more question, and we have a little bit of a thing that we do here on the podcast to finish off. What is one thing that you wish more people knew about you?
One thing that I wish more people knew about me.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. That's a good one. Because a lot of people know outside of track, I love other stuff like fashion, DIY stuff. Um, One thing that I wish more people knew about me. I don't really know. That is really a good question. I don't know.
We'll have to you'll have to send me a DM or something with your answer later
Yeah,
if you think about it. Yeah, I don't even know what my own answer to that would be, to be quite honest with you. So I don't blame you for.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, TT, we've covered a lot of ground in this interview. Everything from how you got into track to what you're looking forward to in the Olympics to maybe what you want to do after track. I guess one more question. Speaking of doing your own thing, do you have any ideas of what you would want to do? Like, you said starting your own daycare, but outside of that, is there anything else that excites you about business?
Just starting my own daycare and starting my own foundation, and then I've somewhat started a book club this year, so I want to get back into that full force and eventually expand into different areas with that.
Love it. So, TT, we have this thing here on the podcast. We do it with every guest. And so at the end of every episode, I ask my guest to leave a piece of advice for the next guest. But the catch is that you don't know who the next guest is going to be. And so the advice from our last guest on the show, our last guest was Jimmy Traina. Jimmy has been a writer for Sports Illustrated. He is the host of the Sports Illustrated Media podcast. He's interviewed athletes like Brady, like Derek Jeter, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And his advice for you, which is actually crazy that this was his advice for you, because I feel like it's what we've talked about at length on this podcast. His advice was always remember sports are supposed to be fun. And so what does that advice mean to you? And then what is the piece of advice you'd like to leave for our next guest?
I would say that piece of advice means a lot because, like I said, once the moment you stop having fun with it and you're no longer enjoying it, it's time to find something else to do. Because you gotta have those moments where it's fun, especially with sports, because you already put your body through a lot. You're already working hard. You gotta have that motivation to get you through the moments where you don't want to do things or you feel like down or this and that. So just being able to have that component of fun is what allow you to get more out of it that you're doing. Like for me, like my group, we're always having fun for the most part. We always uplifting one another or motivating each other, and we stick together. You know, that's a huge component for us, especially like when we in the fall season where you're dying and doing longer workouts and things of that sort. So I would just say you always gotta have that piece of fun component in order to make things remain the main thing.
And then your piece of advice for our next guest.
My piece of advice for the next guest is, what did I tell them? To always give yourself a breather, give yourself room to breathe. You don't have to always just be on go every single time, and just to rely on their support group, even if they're considered the strong friend or the strong person. Always take that moment to just breathe and allow others to help you if they can.
Love it. TT, before we sign off, obviously all of your links to your social media will be in the description, but anything you'd like to shout out?
I'll just say shout out to the whole Florida. We going to Paris.
Let's go. We will definitely be rooting hard for you, TT. I will definitely be watching, and hopefully you can bring back some medals for the United States. So can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been fantastic. You're an amazing human being, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in Paris.
Thank you.